there's a common denominator over the last few years. And under Doug Peterson, they were 4-6 and then 5-7, and then they crawled themselves out of it because they didn't give up on Doug Peterson either. So when this happened again now with a different head coach, they're a part of it, no doubt. But it just says a lot about Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, even though he's not playing. I'm sure he's still active in there, and Darius Slay. It says a lot about the leadership of this crew. And I really don't want that to be looked down upon on the coaching staff because they do have a big role of it. But I think what this really shows me now that, that the common denominator are some of these guys in the locker room, how much that they really have a say in the way that this motor keeps going, no matter how poor it is at times. And it's the professionalism, I think, of some of these guys. And ironically enough, they're the anchor of this offensive line that's really plowing through right now.
You got your Mac guys here on Birds 365, McMullen and McDonald. We are joined by Hunter Brody, who looks like he's ready to talk some Eagles with us from Bodes Media 97.5, The Fanatic. How you doing, Hunter?
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me again. How are you?
There he is. That's what I want. I want that energy, Hunter Brody. That's what we have in Philadelphia right now. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Yeah, what have you been hearing about this fan base, the Philadelphia Eagles? And all of a sudden, we've gone in a couple weeks span, Hunter, from the coach is one and done, the quarterback can't play, he's awful, to playoffs, Jim Mora playoffs.
Yeah, classic. That's the classic reaction we normally go through here. Look, it's very just from an entertainment standpoint. Look, I think the first couple of weeks it started, at least for me, it was like, oh God, this kind of feels like the end of Doug Peterson a little bit, where they just weren't competitive. They were getting blown out. It looked incompetent. Offense kind of struggled at times, and then when they looked decent, the defense was struggling at times. But they kind of turned it around here, and I got to give a lot of credit. It starts with Nick Sirianni really establishing, the strengths of this team. They said that in the beginning. I don't think they really coached that way, and then they realized, look, the trenches, that's our bread and butter. Let's work with it, especially with that offensive line. So, to start off here, I guess we just really got to credit the coaching staff for dialing up new things, and Gannon bringing the pressure on third down and bringing Avonte Maddox, Alex Singleton, putting pressure on these quarterbacks. And I do think from the defensive standpoint with Gannon, there's no threat, so he doesn't feel nervous about maybe sending that blitz. Will it look different if there's a different style of quarterback? Maybe. But if you look at the rest of the schedule, there's none of those quarterbacks until the last game of the season. So it sets up for a nice little run here towards the backstretch.
Brody, when the Eagles were struggling early on, John mentioned the coach could be one, the quarterback's not good enough. Those conversations were being had. One thing that we continually said here on Bird 365 was, but, they are playing hard for the coach. Even when they were getting beat, they play all 60 minutes, and there would never be a lack of effort. Every once in a while, stupid penalty, which was kind of on the coaching staff, but it never showed itself in effort. They never looked like they gave up or quit on this coach, which was a good sign. Now that they've got what they need to do figured out, that effort is going a long way with the Eagles.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, I just brought this up the other day, and I don't want this to be looked down upon in a bad way about the coaching staff, but there's a common denominator over the last few years. And under Doug Peterson, they were 4-6 and then 5-7, and then they crawled themselves out of it because they didn't give up on Doug Peterson either. So when this happened again now with a different head coach, they're a part of it, no doubt. But it just says a lot about Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, even though he's not playing. I'm sure he's still active in there, and Darius Slay. It says a lot about the leadership of this crew. And I really don't want that to be looked down upon on the coaching staff because they do have a big role of it. But I think what this really shows me now that, the common denominator are some of these guys in the locker room, how much that they really have a say in the way that this motor keeps going, no matter how poor it is at times. And it's the professionalism, I think, of some of these guys. And ironically enough, they're the anchor of this offensive line that's really plowing through right now.
Yeah, plowing through, to say the least. 200 rushing yards, 3 of the past 4 games. This is nirvana for Philadelphia fans. Run the football, run the football, run the football. This is the best rushing attack in the NFL right now. I think they're number 2 overall. They've climbed. But over the past 4 games, it's been unbelievable. And look, Miles Sanders is a good back. We saw some of the talent as he came back, ball security, maybe some issues there. Jordan Howard has been running very physically. He's probably not going to be available for the Giants game, but next in line is the Giants killer Boston Scott. These are all good football players, but they're not great running backs. They're not Derrick Henry. They're not Dalvin Cook. They're not Christian McCaffrey. Jalen Hurts is the reason this team is so dominant in the running game. Is that sustainable? We always talk about this with quarterbacks who touch the football a lot. Hits are going to come. Is this sustainable long term?
It's a great question. I mean, 50 runs. It's funny. Everyone wanted balance, right? When they were passing the ball a lot. This isn't balance either, but everyone's satisfied with it. I have questions about Jalen Hurts and the arm and all this, and I think it's fair to question it because when you're throwing the football, whether it's 19 times or 20-something times, you do question if this is going to work. And then you can also say if the Saints can't stop you, who is going to stop you, right? That's like the other side of things. What I do know is for the short term, this is going to work. And for the long term, we might have some questions, especially if your only 2 weapons in the passing game is Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert. You're going to have to somehow implement more guys throughout. But when you're not passing as much, there's not as much opportunities for other guys at the same time. So in terms of is it sustainable, I think for this year it is, especially because I mentioned the schedule as well to maybe sneak into the playoffs and have a little bit of excitement. With the quarterback, it's like I'm starting to turn around on it more and believe in this kid more each week as he's progressing. And with Lamar Jackson, and they're 2 different style of runners, obviously, but the point of the idea with this offense that the Ravens put together for him was like, it's different. It's not the same. It's not the pocket quarterback. And maybe that's part of their struggles in the postseason. And maybe it won't work for them to go get that championship. But the idea of their sustained success built around something different in its own way that isn't the pocket passer with the big arm. Maybe there's something to that identity that can work in the favor of Jalen Hurts, where maybe this can work as the franchise guy. And I'm starting to turn more around to it, to be honest with you, but I still don't know. I still have my concerns. So I don't know if it's sustainable, but for the short term, I think it is.
All right, let me follow up on sustainability. You touched on it, Hunter. Devontae Smith do a nice job getting open, catching the ball. Dallas Goedert getting some separation, catching the ball. And then there's everybody else. Can you have a season where you have 2 options in the passing game? That's what it's been the last couple of weeks. Either throw it to Smith or throw it to Goedert, or don't throw the ball. Let Jalen pull it down and take off and run. Who can step up? Who can be that third guy? And I don't think anyone's going to get close to the top 2, but who can step into that spotlight as the third option and catch a handful of balls a week? I'm not talking 6 or 7, but 3 would be nice to give you a little balance in your passing game other than your top 2 receivers.
If you're looking for negative yards, I think we know our guy, Jalen Reagor.
There's a shot on goal.
You know, I did hear something interesting, and I don't believe it, but it's just an interesting perspective on it. It's like, all right, Jordan Howard was on the practice squad, right? And then now it's, why was Jordan Howard not caught up week 3, week 4? Like, what took so long? And then I heard this take the other day, and it's just, I don't believe in it. It's just interesting. That's all. It's like, is Greg Ward someone that is being hit on the, not being utilized a lot? And maybe he's someone that you could say the same thing about Jordan Howard. And I'm not going to bet my mortgage down on it, but, just knowing that has happened throughout this town. TJ Edwards, it was Alex Singleton and Eric Wilson for a long period of time. Here's someone who lacked some playing time, and now he's doing well. So I don't know. I mean, my easy answer would be Quez Watkins, but you could tell he's still raw. He's got the potential. There's still a lot to learn, but with the route tree and all, I think that there's some things that he's struggling with. So my answer would be Quez Watkins. I think that's the safe answer. I'll give you the safe answer, but I don't know. Like, is there something to Greg Ward? Is that crazy?
Free Greg Ward. Yeah, I know. I loved you, Brody.
Jody is a huge Greg Ward guy. Yeah, John Hightower, who knows? But somebody like that, I hear. I asked Nick Sirianni that about only 2 receivers getting the targets. He kind of stumbled. Look, Jalen Rager's not happy. I can say that officially on Birds 365. But he hasn't deserved the playing time either. So it's interesting. And this brings me to my next question, Hunter, and the fact that let's play this out. Let's say the Eagles make the run. The Giants, we saw the Giants last night. They are god-awful on so many levels, from the GM on down. I find it very hard to believe the Eagles aren't going to beat that football team. Then you have the New York Jets. Close your ears, Jody. That's a bad football team, but you know that better than anybody else.
Oh, yeah.
And you move on. Washington.
Joe Flacco, not happy the Eagles traded him. Very motivated guy.
Very
a couple
motivated.
Of weeks from now.
Yeah, very motivated. Washington football team, maybe they have some issues. That'll probably decide. But let's say they make the run, they make the postseason, they're the 7th seed. Is that better than answering the questions? If you're Howie Roseman and you're saying, do I have to build around Jalen Hurts? Do I have to look at Kenny Pickett? Do I have to trade for Russell Wilson? I made the playoffs. So does that make Jalen Hurts my guy? Is that good or bad long term? To sneak in and get waxed by, say, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I would say that it's a positive. I know that's a big debate right now. It's like, would you rather lose to get the draft picks, or would you rather get the experience? And I'd say I'd rather get the experience. I don't think, look, it's not the NBA. It's not basketball. It's not the process with the Sixers. It's meaningful to learn about Nick Sirianni in high-pressured situation. You're on the road. What's his game plan going to look like? If they do get waxed, they get waxed. But I feel Jalen Hurts is one of those competitors where if he gets waxed, don't you think that his offseason is going to be even more motivated, more determined to get better and all this? And I'm not a Howie hater by any means. I actually fall in the category, it seems like a lover, which is not the truth either, but I just don't despise the man like other people do. And with him, it's like I do feel he's made moves in the past to go get a quarterback, to go get Carson Wentz. They didn't have 3 first-round picks to do that. So there's other ways to find your guy if you do, because I believe that Jalen Hurts has done enough this year to at least deserve another opportunity and utilize maybe those draft picks to help build the defense a bit, maybe help go grab that wide receiver, another high draft pick on the wide receiver. Who knows how the board falls, but I just think that with the way Jalen Hurts has played, they sneak into the playoffs. There's something to be said about him earning another year. And if he ends up not being the guy after another full season and you realize that, hey, there's just a cap, that there's a ceiling that they just can't get over because of his limited skill set, there are other ways to get that quarterback. And it's not as if there's a Trevor Lawrence sitting there this year that it's a no-brainer. If you're going to take a flyer on a 50-50 guy, and maybe it's not 50-50, maybe that's unfair to some of these guys coming out, but what's Jalen Hurts right now? Is he in that same percentage of hit rate as maybe some of these guys you're looking at? So I don't look at it as a negative at all. I only look at making the playoffs, especially this early in a new tenure here in Philly with some young coaching people like Brian Johnson, I think he's a smart football mind. All these guys getting that experience on the sidelines, I think is extremely valuable. So I don't see it as a negative in any way.
Right. And here's the other thing that you need to factor in when evaluating, what would be better for the Eagles to lose here at the end or win and sneak into the playoffs and then get it handed to them in the first round? You have 3 first-round draft picks, not just 1. If they just had their own draft pick and they're moving up, they're not going to be able to get a star player. They got the Dolphins. They're going to get the Colts pick. I know it isn't locked in yet, but you can go ahead and lock it in. It's going to happen. They're going to get that pick. So if there is a player that they specifically want, if Howie Roseman's good at 2 things, number 1, it's locking up players to contract extensions. Number 2 is his maneuverability in the draft. Now then, actually calling the right name, that comes into question. But he's very good at playing the Monty Hall, let's make a deal during the draft. He can get a position whoever he wants to get with the assets he's got in place. So, no, let's go ahead and win and give these players a reason to believe in themselves going forward into 2022.
I can't agree more. Then you kind of look, once again, I'm not sitting here and dying on the Howie Roseman hill, but if you just think of, we're loving this offensive line right now. Well, their right guard, their left guard, and their left tackle. I mean, these are players, and Lane Johnson's only 31, but I'm just looking at the youth. Like Landon Dickerson turned it around a little bit after struggling the first few weeks of him getting some action. Jordan Mailata is going to be here for a long time. Like his fingerprints are on this offensive line that everybody is loving and saying is one of the best offensive lines they've seen and how dominant they are. So I just think like cool the Jets on the whole Howie thing. And like Devontae Smith and Landon Dickerson, that's a good start to this new draft, even though it's way too early to make an assessment and fully dive in on, is it an A+, is it a B, is it a C, whatever it is, all around. I just think that, I trust the direction that they're going in on this little turnaround, and they're set up for success. Like I feel to a degree, they started the fire and they're putting out the fire. That type of concept is happening. But I do think that this is going to be a quicker turnaround because they set themselves up with these draft picks and with the cap space with Carson Wentz coming off the books here for it maybe not to be as a disaster for as long as some fans thought it was going to be. Now, he has time to screw this up. There's no doubt about it. But they're not in the worst position in the world either for the long-term kind of retool, if you will.
Well, let's keep going down this rabbit hole and get you in more trouble with the Eagle fan base, Hunter, because you love Howie Roseman. We all know you love Howie Roseman. I give Howie credit as well. You bring up the offensive line. So we all watched the New York Giants last night. And it's not like they haven't tried to fix the offensive line. Their left tackle, you saw he caught a touchdown. He's a better receiver. He might be the number 3 receiver on the Eagles, but he's not a good left tackle in Andrew Thomas. Will Hernandez is the worst second-round pick I've ever seen in my life. They put all this money into Nate Solder, who was a great player in New England, can't play at all with the Giants. Meanwhile, Howie Roseman, one of the parts of his job is assistant coaches, hiring somebody like Jeff Stoutland, keeping someone like Jeff Stoutland. The Eagles, they don't have Brandon Brooks. They don't have Isaac Seumalo. Could you imagine if the New York Giants or another team lost their starting guards? Jack Driscoll is playing well. Landon Dickerson, as you mentioned, is a second-round pick, playing very well. Is there a more important name to this organization than Jeff Stoutland, number one? And who's responsible for keeping Jeff Stoutland? It's Hunter's guy, Howie Roseman.
It's a great point. But no, I mean, if you remember, and I know you do, but like it was conversations or maybe at the end of last season that he would go back to the college routes and the ties to Alabama and all that. And I thought that would be a disastrous, not only just because he's as great as he is, but just in terms of there's not many veteran guys on this coaching staff at all. I was always in favor of, if you hired a Jim Caldwell as an OC or, just someone that you can rely on to kind of lean on. They go the Jim Bob Cooter route as the good old consultant. I love that, right? Like all these are consultants, I should say, right? They're always trying to maneuver through these terms on what they do. But, Jeff Stoutland is an incredible piece. I love the fact that you bring up, if guys go down, you have Nate Herbig waiting, you have Andre Dillard, and I will die on this hill. This whole Andre Dillard sucks thing. It's like, no, we're spoiled. We are spoiled.
No question.
Jordan Mailata, Jason Peters, Trey Thomas, Andre Dillard would start on all these teams, and he might not be elite. He might not be the most dominant left tackle in the world, but you have no idea how bad offensive line play is until you sit there on a Monday night and you watch it. So it wasn't a disastrous pick. Even if you go back, he was highly regarded in as a college athlete at the time to be picked as one of the first offensive linemen kind of off the board. So I just thought that you look through, and the fact that if we slot in Andre Dillard, Nate Herbig, any of these guys waiting to get their chance, they're going to do more than just a serviceable job. What team has the ability to say that right now? Now, with all this said, it is fair to point out the misses and the disastrous stuff, but I always go back to, if we know J-Jaw was a Jeffrey Lurie pick, right? Are we just going to act as if that's the only time ever that Jeffrey Lurie has ever had an impact, just because that's the one that's known publicly? I mean, really, we're just going to act as if that's the only time ever he's maybe had an impact on things? And then if your argument is, well, then Howie Roseman should tell him to shut up and pick who he wants, then Howie Roseman doesn't have a job. So it doesn't make much sense to me. That doesn't mean he's off the hook for these bad ones, but I just think we're so deep into it. It's perfect that we're bringing up the Giants because I heard Michael Kay up in New York say this a while ago when Gettleman was under fire even more than he is now. And he specifically said, and I was cracking up, do you see how great Philadelphia's ran? Do you see that Howie Roseman general manager down there? And I'm going, geez, Michael, if you only heard what people said down here. So he's not perfect. I think we're just so invested in it that we emotionally, that we don't take a step back to study what else is out there, how much worse it could be, and where he relates to everybody else with some, like everyone points out the Rams. Yeah, guess what? They do it a different way, but because every time I say, what GM would you want? They always, the Rams, the Ravens, the Green Bay, this, that. I mean, Green Bay, they're a dumpster fire with Aaron Rodgers. Like they don't have that. He wants out this and that. It's not as smooth as you think in other places is my point.
Note to self, have Hunter back on when Andre Dillard gets traded and gets beat out by a 7th-round pick.
Not going to happen, Jody. Hunter is 100%. Jody closes.
I learned from Johnny on that hill together. Yeah. The Andre Dillard from Johnny can actually play Hill. Feel free to pick yourself up off it at any time.
When Jody, and I tell him this all the time, Hunter, when Jody closes the book on a player, it is slammed shut, baby. He burns it. There is no coming back.
He stepped in and did a decent job.
He did a solid job.
Andre Dillard and my guy Derek Barnett, both starting for the Houston Texans next year. Write it down.
Possible.
Until they get replaced by better players, undrafted free agents brought in.
Now, the Texans have Laramie Tunsil, so Andre can't go there. He's one of the few players they have. But Hunter's right. He played well. He played well when he was forced into the lineup. Wasn't great, but he was competent. He's better than Andrew Thomas, who's a top 10 pick on the New York Giants.
Yeah, but that's Andrew Thomas can at least catch. We determined that last night.
Hey. Don't rule out Andre Dillard for 7 next week, fellas.
Yeah, that's one I don't think we have to sweat. All right, Hunter, I do want to get you on the defense, too. We've talked a lot about the offense. If you had to grade Jonathan Gannon this past week, he's an A+ in the first half. Different looks, bringing blitzes from different places, giving the cornerbacks the chance to make plays on the island, outside, Darius Slay to the house. Phenomenal. And then there was the second half, and they took their foot off the throat of the opposition, and they went into that safe zone, and they had Zach McPherson on the field, which didn't really pay dividends. They were without Darius Slay. Any worries that Jonathan Gannon just slipped back into what Jonathan Gannon does, which is, hey, we'll let you move it down the field. We'll just wait for you to make a mistake. They got lucky that Trevor Siemian was capable of making mistakes. Are they going to do that again this week against a guy like Daniel Jones, who's capable of making mistakes?
Yeah, I think you'll see more pressure brought on him. I mean, you could see some of those interceptions that were thrown yesterday and all. He's not confident whatsoever to kind of pick you apart. So with Gannon, I think big picture, I still have a lot of concerns because if you're playing a team that has a high-powered offense, he'll probably sit back more into that soft coverage and let them dink and dunk and kind of get through and take what's given, 7 yards, 8 yards, 7 yards, and death by a million paper cuts, basically. I think he will do that. But for the rest of the way, once again, you're set up for this. I mean, right now, basically, after the first year, this is going to be my analysis on Jonathan Gannon. It's going to be, if you're playing a mediocre and below average quarterback, you're going to be in a good position to win this game. If you're playing a high-powered kind of offense with a really good quarterback, I haven't seen that adjustment made yet. Now, maybe all these games against bad quarterbacks will give him some information of, maybe I can't dial it up every time, but I can do some of the things I'm doing and implement that throughout when there is somebody. But when there's a threat to beat you over the top with a quarterback that has a strong arm, he's scared. He's very scared of that. So I don't have enough info yet on what he will do against some of these better quarterbacks, but I will admit that they're both of these coaches are learning on the fly here. They're learning as they're on the sidelines more, and I'm just hoping and praying that what he is doing well against these garbage QBs, maybe he can take some of that data and realize it can work. And see, what bothers me is I'm always like I'm not always, but, all the people that scream like, run, right? It's like, well, you're obnoxious, but it's working, and it's like, whatever. Like, these people are like, blitz. It's like, you don't have to blitz every time. But, like, it's working right now. I got you, right? Like, Tom Brady will pick apart a blitz if you send a blitz every single time. So, like, it's not that simple. It's not that easy. But, yeah, there is some legitimacy to bringing more pressure than he was, more disguises, maybe some more stunts up front that can help out some of these defensive linemen and all. So, that's kind of where I'm at now with Jonathan Gannon. I think that I'm nervous about better quarterbacks, but there's really no quarterbacks until you look at Dak Prescott at the end.
Yeah. Last one from me, Hunter, and thank you. I know you got to get your coffee with Brody. So we
That's
get
right.
you before, so you got to get that in. 97.5 The Fanatic as well for Hunter Brody. Listen to him there. Is there any way this team can lose the New York Giants? You're just talking about bad quarterback play. Jonathan Gannon, he's rock solid. You're going to get some bad quarterback play from Daniel Jones. I don't know much, but I know that. So how can you envision a way they lose this football game?
All right, so this is my problem. When you look at the back half of the schedule on paper, you go, I don't know how they lose this game. Maybe you can chalk one up to Washington and then you end up losing one, right? But, like, in what universe am I honestly going to assess what I saw this entire 11 games in the beginning of the season and then write them off for like a 7-game win streak? Like, that's impossible. There's no way. So here's what I'll say when I look at the rest of the way here, and specifically the Giants. They're due for a hiccup. They're due for, it might not be necessarily because the other team is so special and the other team is so good and they're so dynamic, but maybe they shoot themselves in the foot. Maybe those penalties come up big time and Derek Barnett has a big roughing the passer, or maybe it's Hargrave and then we get that woman again screaming who's all over the airwaves, right? Like, it might come down. It might not necessarily be because the other teams are doing something that's clicking, or maybe they do. Maybe they have one of those weeks. I mean, you look at the Jets, you look at Tennessee and the loss that they have. It does happen. So knowing what I've seen out of this Eagles team, they have flaws. They've been playing great. They have flaws. So there's no way that I can write in W's the rest of the way, because that would be malpractice for me. I've seen them have some really struggling moments and really poor plays. And maybe because guess what? We talked about second half adjustments a little earlier. With Jalen Hurts, there's something to be said about if Vic Fangio, if he ended up going in another direction, he sent a lot of blitzes, a lot of pressure early. He stayed with it too long. That second half, if Darius Slay didn't bring that one back to the house, I'd be a little concerned for what would have happened in that second half. And then same with a little bit of last week. There's something about the second half adjustments that I don't know if this coaching staff has yet dialed in yet. And maybe there's something to be said about that, whether it's Ron Rivera. I don't know if it's Joe Judge that'll outcoach him to death in the second half. But maybe there's something to that will come back and bite the Eagles in some of these games down the stretch here that will maybe they do lose to the Giants. Maybe they do lose because of self-inflicting wounds more so than the other team is so special, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. All right, last one for me, Hunter. And, oh, by the way, if Fox catches a fan this weekend in the stands that you can do some serious lip reading with, it'll be about Dave Gettleman. It won't be about the Eagles and or the referees. Believe me, it'll be about Dave Gettleman in New York. Our field goal kicker had a nice game on Sunday, 4 for 4. Every time they sent him out there, he drilled it through the uprights. We have not had a game yet this year sit on the right leg of Jake Elliott. If that's the way it plays, 23-23, Eagles get the ball back, get it into 40-plus yard field goal position as time runs out. What's your confidence that Jake Elliott's going to win the game for?
It's definitely high. I mean, it's a big turnaround for him. He did not have a good season last year, and he was struggling a bit, and there was some concern, and I think it was valid to have some concern. But he's basically, at this point, I almost think, oh, this is a no-brainer. This is an automatic. This is absolutely going to happen. Like, he's going to drill it. To this point, I felt that confident every time. And it's hard to feel that way, right? I mean, you look at Baltimore. I always laugh because it's got to be so hard. I mean, it is. It's hard to be a cool kicker, right? I mean, like, it just is.
Coolest guy on the I mean,
yeah, it's crazy that Baltimore has that. And I don't know. I always think about that. So hard. Just dominance as kicking is what makes you cool. And with Jake Elliott, he's had the Super Bowl run. He was a hero then in the Giants game. If we're going to bring up Boston Scott, maybe Jake Elliott returns in this one as well. But to answer your question, I mean, the confidence level in him is sky high right now. And I guess maybe he could play the card that he's due. but I don't want to go down that road.
Oh, you're going to get out on that note, Hunter Brody's
I
due
can't
to
do
miss
that.
one?
No.
You really want to get out on that note? Are you
I haven't had my coffee yet. This is bad.
There you go.
Blame
This
it on
is
the
bad.
coffee. Good job, Hunter. And good job coming on with us today. We appreciate it greatly. We'll get you on again soon enough, bud. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Happy Thanksgiving.
That's
You too.
Hunter
Thanks,
Brody,
Hunter.
Broads Media, 97.5 here with us.
He's right about Justin Tucker. Coolest guy. The Ravens have been in here a number of times for joint practices. He's cooler than the quarterbacks. That guy is unbelievable. The ball comes off his foot just different than everybody else. It just looks different. It's like a little mini explosion coming off his foot. It's unbelievable. But Jake Elliott's been great. 90%, Jody. 18-20.
That's damn good.
That's pretty good.
That's why I brought him up. 4 for 4, no question. And I know it's nitpicking, but they always give you the great shot so you can see it and judge it afterwards. He knocks them down the middle. There are guys that sneak them just inside the upright, and you're wondering, are they playing to win, not playing to win? Is he not able to kick it where he wants? Elliott goes right down the middle on almost every single kick. You don't even have to sweat. Oh, is he going to pull it back in? He's going to have draw on the kick. No, it's right down the middle every single time.
Yeah, I probably said this before, but he might be the best athlete on the Eagles. Well, he's great at everything.
He wins all those contests.
He's a great golfer. He's everything with a stroke. I always say he's phenomenal at. He's a great baseball player, great golfer, table tennis, anything. He does everything. He goes on Instagram. He does trick shots in golf. He's unbelievable.
And you talk about kickers being cool, and that the Baltimore kicker might be the coolest guy on the team. You know, it was one of the coolest Eagles I ever had the pleasure of getting to know, hanging with, doing charity things with. David Akers was a cool character.
There you go.
He was a great dude. And one of the things that his teammates appreciated about him, he also wanted to be a football player. He got his nose in there on tackles. He was in the weight room with the guys. He wouldn't just sit by his stall and, I'm the kicker. I don't have to do. No, he'd get in and actually exercise with the guys. So the team appreciated him because he thought of himself as a football player, not a kicker. And I think the fans felt that way too.
Isn't the Jets kicker? He's a monster, isn't he? He's in the weight room.
He is, but the problem is he's not that good.
He's not that good, but he can
it's
live.
Good that he's one of the guys, but it does eventually come back to how many times you get, what percentage you get it through the uprights. I think he was 1 for 3 last week.
That's not good.
Might have been 1 for 4.
I know he's got the Ed Hockley guns though. You know, sun's out, guns out.
Which is cool, but more importantly is get it through the uprights. All right, he's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We are your Mac and Mac guys. Next hour, we'll get Les Bone up. We haven't talked to Les in a month or so. Plenty still to discuss on the road to New York. Giants up next for the Birds here on Birds 365.